Unfortunately for me, I'm quite a stubborn person. I have my own original project that I want to work on. So
Mm,
whenever I get home, I tend to be like, okay, time for me to start uh, do more animation and do more artwork.
mhm.
But if I'm too tired, then of course I would tell myself, no, I need to stop that. I would just take a break for a while.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Story Building, where I now have more episodes than Michael Edwards' little interview thing, although he talks to a more specific kind of person. So, today's guest is artist, animator, and someone who seems to really like the color blue, apparently. It is Phui Jing Ling. Welcome to One
Hello.
Story Building. Of course,
Hi.
hello. Of course, as question one, I'd love to ask how you got into animation, but that's a really boring question. So I'm going to mix it up. Whenever I hear animators talk about how they got into animation, a common story is that they would use the library computers at school to do little animation projects during school hours, but not on projects for school. Were you one of those people?
Unfortunately, no,
Mm.
because we. Uh, so as far as I know, animation is not a big thing in my home country, Malaysia. I don't know anything about animation as a kid. We don't have any of those stuff at all. It was until um, I was studying graphic design, and they have this animation class for just one course, and that's where I found out that, oh, I can do animation, I can make the character move and do lip sync and everything. This is something I find a lot of joy in doing it, and I want to pursue it. So I basically found out about what I want to do with the animation at a pretty late age compared to most people.
So do you know what got you into specifically being a cartoon animator?
For cartoon, I would say I'm mostly inspired by some of my favorite cartoonists on the event back then. I love how expressive and cartoony the character look. That's kind of why I decided to go with that art style.
Yeah,
I used to draw animation style.
yeah, in animation you can do anything. It's so
Yeah.
versatile and flexible. Um, when I was a kid, I drew on piece of paper with pencil all the time. I drew a lot of Star Wars things. I'm into Star Wars characters with like stats and clinical information. But then when I turned about 10, I stopped drawing completely, just cold turkey. And I started writing out stories instead. And until like my late 20s, I never really understood why that happened, why I suddenly stopped drawing and then started writing. And it was just this immediate transition. And then I realized when I drew when I was a kid, I never really cared that much about how things actually looked. I didn't care about the shadows or the perspective or whatever. I was drawing blueprints for a story.
Mm.
So for you, as someone who drew and then stayed drawing and then studied animation, was it always about how something looked? Did you always care about the visual aspect of your work? Or were there times when you were essentially doing a quick storyboard for a story, like a non-visual idea?
It's funny to say because I basically start out as someone who just loved drawing, just basically anything I love to draw. And eventually, many years later, I began to realize I want to tell a story. So that's where I slowly shift toward that, where uh, I, I I try to convey some story and message in my illustration work these days instead of just a plain standing guy in of an illustration. If you get what I mean.
Years ago, I was watching a behind the scenes feature video thing on a DVD for a stop motion animated movie. I forget which one. And one of the animators in there said that animating was a way for shy people to act. Do you agree with that?
Shy people to it, as in like people conveying their story through
Yeah,
drawing and
it's
animation.
like they can draw a proxy for themselves to perform something instead of them actually doing it.
I personally agree because I'm that person who convey the message better through my drawing and animation.
Mhm. It reminded me of the first time when I watched Cinderella for the first time, and I saw the list of animators who worked on it, and I thought, these people are the architects for one of the most iconic pieces of art ever, and no one knows who they are nowadays. Their faces are on screen. No, their faces aren't on screen, but the faces that they drew are on screen. And
Mm.
I mean, look at what I'm talking to right now. Do you think that this is an issue that you and other animators may go through where your work's fame can exceed your own fame?
So sorry, what do you mean by exceed my own fame?
Like your work becomes more famous and well known than you as a person are.
I honestly couldn't tell if people think my work is more famous than me or I'm more famous
Mhm.
than my own work.
Mhm.
It's very hard to tell. I guess it's each to their own conclusion on that one.
Mhm. I saw that on your blogspot in 2014, you were taking a course in your education called Digital Video Camera Techniques. And I immediately thought that that has nothing to do with what you do. That's not an animation thing. But hey,
Yeah.
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about this. So the question is, are there ways in which studying aspects of photography, costume design, directing, music composition, or any sort of non-animating skill, is there any way that any of those things could improve your ability to animate?
Well, because I would say those stuff are mostly just teach you how to use the program and everything. But when before I learn how to do, you know, to learn how to get into animation seriously, I basically was very interested to get into the animation production, and I never knew how it worked. So that's where I decided to host the Yu-Gi-Oh! Reanimate, where I recruit over 200 people all around the world to reanimate the episode 2 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0.
Mhm.
Because I have never went to animation school, so I figure this is the best way I can learn about how the production, how the animation pipeline work. So it's interesting to point out that even though I did not study animation, the technique I learned in my uni class, like those After Effect, Premiere Pro, those stuff, it actually come in handy when I try to put together the video and everything actually.
Mm. You mentioned the Yu-Gi-Oh! Reanimated video from 2018, so I very subtly just scrolled down my questions to the last question, which I was going to save for later, where I brought this up. But
Mm.
let's bring it up now, but since you brought it up, I want to talk about, or I have to talk about now because I've just now gotten to that question, AI generated art and the future of art. What has recently turned me away from the fear of what AI art can do are those reanimated videos. Your Yu-Gi-Oh reanimated video, people doing like songs or movie scenes in their own artistic style. It's so fun and creative, and most importantly,
Mm-hmm.
it's personal. And AI art can't do that. But screw it,
Yes.
I'm going to ask this question anyway. What do you think are the dangers of AI art for the risk for the future of animation?
Well, I like it kind of like what you say. I think AI art can never replace the real passion of the real person, like their own uh, uh, how do I say? It's like they pour their own personal feeling into their work, and that's something AI art can never recreate
Mm,
at all.
yeah. Yeah, there's such a community behind these reanimated videos, seeing people's names and how they're all so different, and they give their own style where none is a copy of the other one. It's so fun. I like it.
Mm.
Um, as an animator, you have been to, let's see, Malaysia, Australia, and Finland right now?
I actually never been to Australia. I was working remotely for that one.
Oh yeah, I saw your education was in the University of Swinburne, and I looked it
Swinburne.
up.
That's true. Because the original campus is in Australia, but there is one situated in my home country, so that's why
So you've
I
never
went
been
to
to
my home
Australia?
country. Yeah, I mean, I did went to Australia for a vacation trip, but not for
Okay.
work and education.
Okay. Never mind then. I think the question still applies. Why does an animator need to move around the place to animate when you can just digitally send everything to everyone?
I think it's important to uh, talk and connect with people in real life because you can't really do that a lot when it comes to remotely.
So I saw that your resume credits involve things like rough animation, cleanup animation,
Yes.
and sometimes you do one for one thing and the other for another thing, and not one of them for another thing. Have you ever done a rough animation for something and then someone else is the cleanup artist and you feel like
Oh
they have
yes.
messed up your work?
That happens sometimes. But if that's what the cleanup lead or director want it to look like, then there's nothing I can say about it because this is what they want.
Mhm. Mhm.
Gotta go with what the client say.
Well, I'm wondering, when you're an animator working with other animators on the same animation, what do you have to sacrifice in your artwork to make the other animators metaphorically and I guess literally be on the same page? If you're all different animators with all different kinds of styles, how do you work together to create one finished product?
Mm, you mean, oh, well, I mean, in professional studio setting, we usually just follow the client guideline to make sure everyone stay on page and follow the art style. Even though we have complete different art style, we always have this episode Bible that basically show everyone, okay, this is what the art style we are looking for,
Mm.
and we have basically need to follow how it look like, despite our different art style.
Right, so I guess you have to learn different kinds of styles of art so you can
Yep.
jump onto a project that needs a specific kind.
Yeah, you have to be a chameleon to adapt
Hmm.
different art style.
Hmm. I saw in your actually what kind of is there a name for the kind of style of art that you do? Like I've heard rubber hose animation, and that's all I can think of right now. Do you know what the name of your art is?
You mean like a naming term for my
Yeah,
specific art
if
style?
if it has a category.
Mm, I don't think so. Well, but people tend to compare my art style to some Japanese cartoony anime, so that's something.
I would say that's a compliment, I think, possibly. All right. All I know is that there's rubber hose, which is like Mickey Mouse kind of stuff, and then Cal Arts, which everyone hates apparently.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, my art style definitely not categorized in those at
Mm.
all
Okay.
that I
Okay,
can
good.
say.
I saw in your animation demo reel that there is specifically a lip sync category. And before I saw that video, I just assumed that animators would do lip syncing as part of the whole animation process. Just as they were drawing something, they would just do the mouth like they would do the rest of the body.
Mm.
Not that there would be a specific person for that specific thing. And I think no wonder there's so many people in, especially video games, that have to wear masks and helmets or just don't really have faces just so they don't have to lip sync
Yep.
the mouth. So how do you do lip syncing working with other animators with with their body and your mouth?
I mean, usually when I do lip sync, it's just having the jaw moving while they talk. But if the character is moving while talking, that's basically where I make them move around while talking at the same time, which can be a little tricky sometimes.
Hmm. Hmm. Or yeah, you can just do the anime thing where all the characters in the backgrounds look great, but their mouths just sort of flap up and down like Muppet characters. It's cheap and efficient.
Yes.
Um, I've seen social media posts by you and others where at work at the animation studio, you and your other colleagues are drawing non-work related drawings to each other. And I just think, how do people in an animation studio get any work done when they're in such a fun, creative environment?
I say it because of the freedom and trust they place into us in the studio. That's where we get to do all this
Mm,
stuff alone. We wouldn't feel too uh, socially draining after all the hard work. Usually, we try to we try to socialize and hang out together after work, and that's the best part about working in a very healthy environment studio.
that's great. Well, surely after you're done drawing stuff for 8 hours a day, when you go socializing with your friends or when you just go home, surely drawing or thinking about drawing is just the last thing that you want to do.
Unfortunately for me, I'm quite a stubborn person. I have my own original project that I want to work on. So
Mm,
whenever I get home, I tend to be like, okay, time for me to start do more animation and do more artwork.
mhm.
But if I'm too tired, then of course I would tell myself, no, I need to stop that. I would just take a break for a while.
Oh, good that you've got the energy and the passion to be able to work after work to fuel your own
Yes,
personal
it
projects.
it definitely not easy, but it's very it feel very good to be able to work on my stuff other than studio work all the time.
Mm. I saw that you have done cleanup animation for Lackadaisy and background art for Hell of a Boss, and like I mentioned before, not the other way around. So, how exactly do they or you decide who does what when you can clearly do both?
That's a very interesting case because I love doing all kind of aspect when it comes to artwork. I love doing background. I love doing animation. I also love doing character design. So whenever I see any job position open, I just apply for it, and
Mm.
they let me give it a try. That's basically what happened.
Yeah, in indie animation has just exploded over the last couple of years. But the whole time, I thought it's going to take a while for it to make any sort of substantial impact and supersede larger animation companies. It's going to, maybe just not soon. But then recently, on a whim, I sat down and watched the pilot for Lackadaisy, and I thought, okay, cats doing stuff because, of course, it's always cats, it's always some kind of animal. And then I watched it, and it is what I would call genuinely beautiful, and I wouldn't really call any other indie animation thing that. So, in your own personal opinion, what should we be expecting for the future of indie animation? Where is it going? How big is it going to be?
I think it's very incredibly beautiful to see so many people pursuing indie animation, especially how we pretty much everyone know uh, uh, how much of a struggle we've been going through with the industry right now. Like so many cartoons getting canceled left and right. Now with AI stuff, people getting laid off. So despite indie animation can be also a very big bumpy road to go through with the financial especially, but it's very encouraging to see that project like a Daisy Digital Circus inspire so many new generation to pursue their own vision and not afraid to take the risk to tell a story of their own.
Mhm. Yeah, it's good to see some big strides happening because as all the people that work on that stuff will tell you, for the longest time they were making projects and at most they were breaking even. They were making their money back at most, and sometimes they were most of the time at a loss. So the fact that they're able to
Mm.
make it and make a profit is an important next step in the indie scene, I think.
Mhm.
It is AI art encroaching on your field? You brought it up before. Is it making people lose jobs and shutting down projects?
Well, I mean, so big, like big studio corporation like Disney and start using AI to to do some uh, interesting stuff for their media. So
Mm.
I I suppose this is a very tricky subject to
Mm.
tackle. But I personally don't think it should affect the 2D animation too much because I I will be honest, I'm not too knowledgeable about AI, but at least from what I saw, usually AI just copy 3D looking artwork
Mm.
for the most part and not the 2D super cartoony looking style.
Yeah, or if they're using AI art, I haven't been able to tell. I remember like a year ago when AI art was sort of was making big steps, I guess, and it still wasn't able to figure out how to do hands. Like it was like a joke meme that an AI person's hands, there was like six fingers and they're all mushed together or something. And everyone made fun of it.
Yep.
Everyone said, "Oh, AI art, it's not going to do anything. Look how badly it can put together hands." And then like a week later, the hands were fine. I was like, "Oh, okay, never mind. It's just going to keep getting better and better until we can't tell." And maybe we're
Mm.
already there where we just can't tell.
Mm-hmm.
You have an entire page on your website detailing your commissions. And I would like to ask, what seems to be the most common kind of commission you get from people that ask for commissions?
Well, I'm very grateful that most people who came ask me for commission are very much supportive of my work. They love my art style. So that's why they came email me saying, "Hey, I love to see my character in your art style," or their VTuber in my art style, so they can use it for their patients, stuff like that.
So let's just assume that indie animation will get on top and lead the charge for maybe just storytelling in general. In your experience, what are the pitfalls that you would recommend writers and directors and artists avoid in this indie animation journey? What shouldn't they do?
I personally would uh, highly recommend them to not do a 30-minute pilot because I saw
Mm.
many young people tend to underestimate how hard it is to handle indie stuff. It
Mm.
is so much work you have no idea. Like
Mm.
even I managed the Yu-Gi-Oh! Reanimate with 200 plus people and everything. It was already a lot of hard work with so much responsibility shoulder on you. While
Mm.
at the same time, I was also juggling my full-time job just so that I can afford the living. So I highly recommend people to try maybe like 1 to 5 minute pilot instead of the full episode just to
Mm.
test the water.
Mm. Yeah.
And if thing doesn't go well, that's where you can decide that, oh, maybe this animation might not be the best route. Maybe I can tell the story through webcomic or perhaps video game. That's pretty much what happened to me when I made the Puyo animation. Like I made that Puyo animation while juggling three freelance work at the same time. So that's why it took about 2 years to finish completely. I believe that Puyo animation is about 4 minutes, and I basically handle the background, the character redesign, the rough animation, cleanup, color, effect animation, composition. So I basically handle so many aspects on it. And at the end of the day, when I finished the Puyo animation, I was basically burnt out, like so hard to the point that I do not want to touch animation for a while. It was that severely hard.
For those who don't know, what is the Puyo animation?
It's basically a fan animation I did based on a video game that I personally love from the Sega IP. It's a
Is
puzzle game.
is that
They
how
have a
you
lot of.
would recommend upcoming animators to start doing fan animation of stuff?
Well, I mean, um, I think it's a good starting point because for me, I never go to animation schools. So for the longest time, I knew people tend to have this class where were told to finish. Okay, you need to finish 4 minute animation, teaches film in that year and stuff like that. And I never experienced that. That's kind of where it motivated me to try that Puyo animation in the first place, just to see how much I can learn and take what I know from there. And at the end of the day, I knew there is no way I can do 20 plus minute of a pilot animation or of any other future content I want to do by myself again, because it's just impossible. It's impossible to do everything being a one-man army. You need a team. And it's very unfortunate that animation is such a expensive job that is that's kind of why I say out my Patreon and Coffee, just so that if people really want to see more of them, I I can use the donation to put into my future team to make more content like that again.
Do you ever regret not going to animation school?
At first, I did feel like that, but eventually, I actually felt um, that I'm kind of glad that I didn't go there, because I heard a lot of horror story about students getting into debt and unable to pay for it. And meanwhile, I learned everything I could by myself by watching so many YouTube tutorials and observation on my favorite media. And I think my method is a little too drastic, but it does go to show that nothing is impossible. So in a way, I have many people come to me and say my story inspired them, because it basically proves that you don't need to go to animation school to be successful in the animation industry.
That's so cool. That's so nice how you inspire people to follow passions, even though they may not have an academic affiliation
Yeah.
with it. Yeah, I always recommend people to not study academically any sort of artistic thing, not even because they wouldn't
Yeah.
learn anything, but because it's just so easy to learn how to do stuff like this online, because all you really need is
Precisely.
your imagination, paint, a pen, and by
Yep.
paint I mean like my Microsoft Paint. Like not go out and buy paint. Or you can as well. Like you don't need a license to get a pen and a pencil and a piece of paper.
Exactly.
You just need
You have so
time
much
and
free
effort.
resource online.
I remember seeing an animation of yours that bobbed up and down. It moved in a very smooth way, unlike your other snappier work. And I immediately thought to myself, that was made in Spine. And then I saw that you listed it as it's one of the programs that you know that you know and use. So, including that, what are all of the programs that you can use and use to put together all of your animations?
um uh I use all kind of program, but the one I usually use the most is TB Paint and Toon Boom. I usually use TB Paint for my rough animation and Toon Boom for cleanup. And Toon Boom is widely used for the animation industry world.
And sometimes spine if you want things to flow like a river.
it's a, it's unfortunate that I didn't use Spine to animate. I mean, I did try it at one point for a job test, but I did not use that for my animation.
Where can people go to find out more about you and your artistic journey?
Well, I suppose they can easily found look into it on my portfolio page. That's the best one I can think about right now.
Yeah, your website has all of the your resume, your history with animation, all of your enormous commission
Yep.
page. So yeah, it's all
Yeah.
there.
Yep.
Just Google Fui. All right, well, that has led us to the last question, which is always the last question that I always ask on this thing that I do, which is, of course, why are stories important?
This is interesting to say. Everyone had different story to convey, to leave a moral message to everyone, be the good moral message or the cautionary tale message, to bring the positive around the world and make a change for the better. That's how I feel.
Phui Jing Ling, thank you so much for coming on to One Story Building.
Thank you for having me.